the Straight Off the Bat live series. It's a show that covers the need to revive and survive and adapt to a new normal of COVID-19. Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us for the first time on Facebook, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. We've been doing this show for just over a year now, and I've learned so much, so I can assure you, you will as well. And today we have the privilege of discussing how to raise financially literate children in Trinidad and Tobago. And I wish my parents was like could actually listen to this conversation because this will then help me. But anyways, moving on. So we have Ladi Franklin. She is a certified business value builder advisor and entrepreneurial thought and action educator. As a value growth advisor at Good Works Coaching and Consulting, she provides value growth coaching to SME founders and business executives. She's also the lead coach and mentor at Network of Christians since 2015. So we want to bring in Ladi. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but we are successfully streaming live with Ladi right now, who is in Trinidad. Which part of Trinidad are you in?
I am in St. Joseph.
Oh, nice. The original capital of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
So when it comes to finances, because we want to get straight into it, it's something that, you know, we sort of laugh and joke about when children have to wash dishes and this idea of child labor. But when do you start having that conversation about finances with children? What is the ideal? Is there an ideal age?
I would say, Pauline, good morning, by the way, and good morning to our listening viewers. I would say that all of research indicates that as early as possible, from the moment of birth, children begin to adopt financial habits, and so it means from as early as possible. There's a Cambridge university report out there that says that from the age of 7, children's financial habits are already formed. There's also another research that indicates that children are developmentally capable of saving from the age of 5. And the University of Cambridge actually advises that from the age of 3 you start. So the research out there indicates that as soon as possible. Now, in my experience, I would say that children are curious about money at different ages. So it may be in your own circumstance, you may need to even start before now. I remember not too long ago, I was at an ATM, and there was this mother and her toddler. I think she couldn't be more than 2 years old. And she came to withdraw some money, and after she finished, the child was asking her, she wanted to have a go at it. And she said no. And the child started to cry, I want $20. I want $20. So she knows, you get money from the ATM. She knows about 20. She knows about dollar. So I would say that from as soon as we recognize that our children are asking questions about money, they're curious about it, and that's our cue to start.
Wow, that's so interesting because you see all these memes and with social media where kids are basically they're sponges, right? So there's this very popular meme of this little flower girl walking down the aisle of a wedding, and she recognizes a celebrity who's sitting down in the back. And from the time she sees him, she starts dancing. She could not have been more than 2. And everybody's
Yep.
just like laughing at the fact because she's associated this person's face with music and dancing. So
Yep.
when you say, as early as possible and looking at 7 and things like that, it's so interesting because as a someone who grew up with Caribbean parents, you tend to hear this thing about don't worry about that. That's not for you to worry about. What
Hmm.
is your opinion on that?
Yes, I agree with you, Pauline. The general thing is parents either they're embarrassed or they just feel uncomfortable. They think they shouldn't speak to their children about money. That's the general practice, actually. But it's not supposed to be so, as we can see from research. You need to start engaging with your children. In any case, the children of these days will ask you, you know, they will ask you, why can't we have more money? Why can't we go to the bank and get more money? Swipe your card. And these are things come, so we really cannot get away from it.
And that question that you just said, this is only going to be a little bit of therapy for me, because I don't know if for those who've watched this before, I these sessions are really for me, and you guys are just here for along the ride. And don't forget to ask any questions, you have any comments, because we have access to that right now. We want to get as much information from her as possible. So when it comes to this Caribbean culture, this Trinidad culture of saying you don't worry about it, but then as a child, you may have you're going to go in primary school and have these outings, pre-pandemic obviously, but still you have all these things associated with money. And I am certain everybody that's watching this at some point in time hear their parents say, why every time the school wants something from me, why is every time you come in with a slip to ask for money. So what advice would you have for parents? Because I mean, even as I'm sharing the example, there's a emotion also attached to that.
First and foremost, I would advise them, like I said, to start as early as possible, because I mean, their situation is not like ours at all. We don't want them to make the same mistakes as we made, just like you said, Pauline, earlier on, that you wish your parents had taught you more, right? If they had taught you at all, because the general picture is that some people didn't even have any financial education at all. And we later learned, didn't we? We learned from the school of hard knocks, costly mistakes, stressful financial mistakes made us to learn. And we want to make it easier for our children. They have greater susceptibility right now to negative influences, and just like you said, everything around them is buy. There's a lot of advertising influences now. And in fact, there's a research that says that the average individual is exposed to 1 million adverts by the time they're 21, right? And that means that the propensity, the conditioning to spend more than save, is greater, for them. And then you also have the pressures, pressures from here and there, pressures from school, pressures from schoolmates, pressures from the society as well. All of these things are there. And then you have, the major problem of habits. Habits are formed financially even from birth for children, if that's what research shows. And it means that, and a lot of us as adults, we can trace some of our financial behaviors and practices from when we were children. And what this means is that if we develop bad habits, they're going to hang around for a long time, because that's the thing about habits. They are easy to form, but they are very difficult to change. And if they are long-standing habits, of course, that is they are even more difficult to break. So my advice is that, you want your children to be okay, don't you? You want them to be financially stable. You want them to have good careers, solid jobs, and a lot of this has to do with not just earning the money, but keeping the money, right? Because we see a lot of people who earn lots of money and they are in dire financial circumstances. That's not what we want to have that's not the kind of life we want for our children. And I know that the average parent, if you ask them, we want our children to have better lives than we did, right? And the core of that is what we teach them about money, how the kind of money values we inculcate in them from childhood.
So let's get into this idea of, you know we want our children to be able to manage money, but what if you don't actually have that skill to teach them, because you yourself still trying to figure it out? How does a parent broach that subject when they're not knowledgeable themselves?
Well, I would say I've heard this several times, and sometimes it's perception as to what you have to teach them. You don't have to be an expert. There's a lot of household activities that, involve money that you could use to teach children. And, I think the average parent, once you shop, once you don't have enough money, in the sense that your needs are going to be a lot more than your finances or your earnings. I think the onus is on you to be able to manage money, right? But you're making a very important point there, Pauline, and I think that that's what you're trying to highlight, that people who have bad money management habits themselves, will find it difficult to teach their children. Fortunately, there is a lot of information out there, a lot, and I would say, there are some from the very simple from the very basic. And as I said, it doesn't have to be some in-depth, just understanding money, understanding the need to earn it, understanding the need to spend it wisely, to save wisely. I don't think that these are things that are difficult to teach, actually.
You say that last part is interesting because most people who know about things always say it's not that difficult. So, as Frank said in the comments, great question, and I can imagine Frank is has the same sentiment as me, because it's one of those things that, I learned to swim 6 years ago, and people tell me how easy it looks, and and I'm just like, it was hard. This idea of changing your body, changing your mind, and certain things, it's definitely hard. So, is there a place that there's like a support system that somebody can go to? Because one thing I realize is the internet is a vast place, right? So I actually, my relationship with money has changed over the years through survival. And being able to find certain people talking about money on YouTube has been great. But I also find it's usually specific to the US. So where can we go?
Well, first, before I answer this question, back to the difficulty in teaching, Pauline, maybe as a child, did you ever hear something like, money doesn't grow on trees?
Of course, that is a staple
Well, that's
across Barbados
financial.
and Trinidad.
Well, that is financial education, right?
Mm.
That is financial education. It depends on what you term it to be. Anything that helps a child to drop bad money management practices and adopt good money values, no matter how you teach it. I think, and our parents actually are full of it. Say for a rainy day. I still remember a lot that my parents passed on to me. They were no financial literacy experts, but they dropped a lot of these phrases here and there. And that for me is enough education. And that also shows a child that, you should take money seriously. It's not for you to just spend how you like. Of course, there are other things, like I said. You talked about spaces where, I mean, if people are going to research on the internet or things like that, I would advise as parents, you go to the ones that specifically address parents, because there's a huge amount of information out there. To be honest, I think that in the main, quite a number of them are good enough for us in this environment. And then we also have the Central Bank Financial Literacy Program as well, where the National Financial Literacy Program would go out to communities to teach parents and to educate parents on how to teach their children financial literacy. So I think we have spaces like that, but in the main, we should look for the spaces that deal with parents and teaching kids financial literacy.
That is such great information because there's so many sayings that comes to mind, and the idea of attaching emotion to money is something I want to delve into, because I know you reference a few research with Cambridge and stuff, so I'm very intrigued to learn more. But we're gonna cover that right after the break. Hey there, welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that covers the need to revive, survive, and adapt to the new normal of COVID 19. Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us from LinkedIn, don't forget to smash that like button and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. Today, we're discussing something that's extremely important for parents. If you are parent or you know somebody who is a parent, go tag them in the comments below because we want to have a discussion around raising financial literacy with children in Trinidad and Tobago. Today, we have the great privilege of talking to Ladi Franklin. She's a certified business value builder, advisor, and entrepreneurial thought and action educator. So let's bring back Ladi and let's talk about emotion attached with money because we've had, I mean, within this Straight Off the Bat series, we've had conversations around investment. We spoke to Philip Williams, who is, if you haven't watched that, definitely go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we had specific conversations around investment. But we both sort of bonded over the conversation about the first time we engaged with money and the first, just literally just ran out by the corner store to get Bigfoot snacks because that was important to 5-year-old me is all I have to say, right? So when it comes to that emotion attached to it, how do you manage that? How do you educate a child? Because I find a lot of times we have this either or mentality, two extremes with parenting, meaning, well, you don't know how to manage your money, so I'll just take it all away from you. What advice would you have for parents on that?
In terms of emotions, you're really looking at, I would say that you target whatever behaviors that you are seeing come out, and you use teachable moments in order for you to be able to address the situation. Now, there are a plethora of emotions that are attached that really affect people's purchase behavior, spending behaviors, and so on. So I don't really know from what direction to address this. But yes, when it comes to emotions, it's really something that first and foremost we want to really understand the child. I mean, I'm hearing you say cut and dried. When it comes to things like this, you really have to be patient and understand what exactly is the feeling behind this, and see the best way that you can walk a child, through with respect to that. For instance, I believe that there's a lot of emotions attached to peer pressure, right? And I'll give an example of my son. In primary school, he wanted um, a pair of shoes that he said his peers in school were going to have. They all planned within themselves without earning any income that they were going to have. They were going to come back to school after holidays with those shoes. Yeah, and me not knowing how much it cost, I said no problem. It was only when we got to the stores and I saw how much it cost. I said, you have to be kidding me. And he also told me I had to be kidding him for saying that I didn't want. I mean, it meant it was like his life. And I said, no, of course, mommy cannot buy this for you. This is, and so I had to be patient with him because he wanted to start a scene right there. Again, like every parent, I had the same challenges because I wasn't starting early enough. But this was primary school, and we did the shopping around thing. And although he saw the difference in prices, but at the end of it, what we saw, the lower price was not something that he wanted, of course. But I went ahead and purchased that. Come the day he went to school, he was very sad. And I felt very bad for him too, you know, and was wondering how to get out of this, But when he closed from school, what I noticed was that his mood changed considerably. And then I asked him, I waited until after 2 days and I asked him, I said, how come you were not so, I mean, when you were going into school, you were so unhappy, because you didn't have those shoes. But when you came out, I noticed you were just whooping and jumping up in the air with your colleagues. He said, what shoes? What are you talking about? I said, you remember you told me that, you had to have those shoes because your peers were going to laugh at you and all of that. He said, no, nothing like that happened. So I said, you see that? And it became a teachable moment for me. So I sat him down and I said, many times what we think people think about us is not what it is. Like I said, I recognize the emotion. you know I identified what it was. That this was peer pressure, but I was not going to be to run him down because of that. I was going to be patient and be looking out for a teachable moment where I can address the situation. And I encountered several opportunities like that, and I will advise parents to do the same. I hope that answers your question.
Definitely. And kudos for you for having that patience because a lot of parents don't. So, and you're right. It's just, that also brings this idea of belonging, because that's what ultimately all we want as humans is to belong. And if other people are doing something, don't mind we think that we are unique. But I had a mentor that always used to tell me you're unique just like everybody else.
Hmm.
So when it comes to that experience, uh, that shapes the individual as an adult. So, what are some of the challenges that children will face in the future that don't have um, a mother like you who has the patience and the understanding of a teachable moment?
Um, I don't really like talking about this because it's like a kind of doom and gloom kind of thing. But really, they are going to face definitely more challenging economic conditions than us. Even at the best of times when economies are strong and so on, people still experience severe financial problems, right? And not to talk of now that we've been having a lot of uh, economic problems that have kind of reached epidemic proportions, and some of the economic challenges that we have they have long lasting impact. So they are going to go into all of that. Then they're also going to face more and more rapid socioeconomic transformations, technological changes, digitalization, and all of these things are going to make financial decision making more challenging. And then we're seeing what is happening with the job market and the career market. That in itself, there are some insecurities. So even understanding, how to take your studies and your career development very serious from an early stage is a very strong component of financial literacy now. Exposing them to the various options that are available. Then you also have the incidence of inflation. When you're talking about inflation, of course, we are talking about, things getting costlier. All of us, we always say the good old days. Every generation will say that. And when we talk about inflation, we're looking at paychecks that are not going to be, they're really going to grow, at the same rate. Interest rates also are going to be just marginally different or better. And then we also have the financial system, which will in itself could continue to be more complex, and making important decisions as to for saving, investing, and so on. That one, they're going to be facing all of that. So without the financial education, without the tools to make informed decisions that affect their lives, what we are going to witness is that they are going to make the same mistakes as we made in the first place. And this is what we don't wish for our children. They are also going to be unprepared, to enter the world, and definitely this is going to impact on their financial security. They're going to have behaviors and practices that, will hinder them from saving, from earning, and even protecting their income. And of course, in fact, their future may be compromised because if you don't start things early, you make financial decisions that will continue to have lasting effects for the rest of your life. So, it's bad enough that you started off wrong, but then again, you keep on, you know, um, suffering from the effects for a long time, you know. And what this means is that, there's a kind of role reversal now. So rather than focusing on their financial security, planning for long term financial security, what they now focus on is financial recovery for the greater part of their lives, which is not a good thing at all.
Whew, that is such a great insight because the idea of like constantly living in a life of financial recovery is exhausting.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something earlier about this idea of good old days, which is something that we so like to do the generation after next generation. I am guilty of that as well with my younger sister. I was like, back in my day, I used to
And look at how
like
young you are, Pauline. You haven't even reached anywhere. You're just starting.
but it's a cycle. It's so interesting because as much as growing up as a teenager, I despise my parents. At some point in time, you recognize that you are part of them. So there's certain elements that you are going to adopt. And when it comes to this idea of back in my day, um, scenario of parenting, what I've seen, and you can elaborate on this, is this idea of working hard, right? So you've been told you have to work hard, but then you're always in this state of financial recovery because you haven't actually saved or invested in anything. And because you haven't had that conversation of sitting down and saying, okay, put a little bit of money aside, this idea of financial recovery, a constant state, becomes a norm. So, as a parent, how do you try to make sure that your child isn't already like always in that state? Even and let's talk about an adolescent or their 20s and sitting down and having that discussion. How do you start that?
Well, it's practically all that we have been saying so far, Pauline. Start early. Even if they are advancing towards their teens, it's not too late. It's better late. It's better that way than never at all, right? And so start as soon as you can. I don't really have anything more to say than that. In the thing is, for us parents, we have to adopt two roles, that of model and models as well as teachers, right? And you have to wear those hats very, very quickly. The thing about it is that unfortunately, parents themselves can be the negative influence in their children's lives, right? But it is very necessary for them to have seen you, seeing what good money management was able to inculcate, to bring to your life, and that becomes a very, very powerful teacher for them as well. I know of many individuals that have told me my mother could cook with a pot of soup with $10 or something like that. That was education by just watching, by just seeing how it works. Start model the good behaviors, and if you have wrong financial behaviors or practices, you need to do something about it very quickly. And then be the teacher, like we said earlier on. Teaching, they would learn first from you. You're their very first teacher, and then your home is a very good enabling environment for teaching, a whole lot of teaching to be going on. So I would say start now. I don't think that there's any advice that could be uh more that can be greater than that, Pauline.
Awesome. So we want to talk about some of the activities that you could implement in homes because you have these popular Rich Dad Poor Dad books, and they came out of that. There were some board games, but from a kid's perspective, I want to look at implementation in the home. But we will cover that right after the break. Welcome back to the live series Straight Off the Bat, a show that covers the need to revive, survive, and adapt to a new normal of COVID-19. Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us from YouTube, smash that subscribe button and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. Today, we're discussing how to raise financial literate children in Trinidad and Tobago. We have the great privilege of talking to Ladi Franklin, and as a value growth advisor at Good Works Coaching and Consulting, she provides value growth coaching to SME founders and business executives. And we've covered so many topics, and we've reiterated certain things when it comes to parents and how you can actually have that conversation about money, which is by default is something that we're always doing all the time. But when we're looking at activities within the home, we want to find out from you, Laddie, what sort of activities, then you can give us some examples that you can implement in your home to teach kids about money.
Okay, I think I've already mentioned some of them. One of them is modeling the behaviors yourself. um, the eyes, those little eyes are watching you. Make no mistake about it. That's why they can say, go and get more money from the bank. That's why when you tell them that the money has finished, they will say, swipe your card, right? So they are watching you. They're seeing everything that you are doing. Make no mistake about it. So, and if your behaviors, if they are positive, it means that they're inculcating that, they're drinking that in, and they see when you spend, they see how you spend, they know if you don't just you budget, before you start spending and things like that, especially if you involve them, right? So the thing is modeling it, and as I mentioned, also teaching, actually teaching them as well, and like I said, many parents are reluctant, but there's no, the only reason why you're reluctant is because you probably think you don't know much about money, or you also have money management problems yourself, and that is your cue. You have to do something about it for the sake of your child, don't you? Yeah. So and then also, like I said, it's not a big you can just use small activities and ways that you can teach your child, they will receive more of this from you than anybody else. That's why this is so important. So even if it means investing in that time to educate yourself, go to any of the sites that for parents to teach financial education for children on parents' website, if that is a good investment. All right. Another thing again is for you to create opportunities for them to learn and to practice within the home. There are many, many teachable moments in the home. You can teach your child financial responsibility, from, just getting them to contribute to chores around the house. I find this very important. Being responsible is important simply because, the house doesn't just get to be well and okay by itself. People have to contribute. So it is the same, it's a very good life skill that you are teaching them there, and you can teach them from home by giving them very simple tasks to do. Make your own bed and do this and do that, and then you can also, create opportunities for them to learn about earning, right? And this is, for me, you're really teaching them the cause and effect situation of hard work. If you work hard, you get paid. Now, I'm not talking about the chores around the house that I just mentioned earlier on. It's about giving them a specific task for which you will give them, some allowance or something, maybe wash the car on Saturdays or something like that, and this is showing them that if you work, right, if you work hard, you get paid. If it's done in a slapdash manner, you could decide to pay them half, and tell them that this was not well done, or you don't pay at all. These are subtle ways that you are teaching them these things. Planning their spending. If you give them the allowance or their pocket money, you're sitting them down and telling them, look, allocate this. It's not all going to be spent on spending, so you could put some aside, save some, you could spend this amount, and you could put this aside, so allocating, so they know that they don't have to spend everything. But we have some parents, you give pocket money and then they come, oh, what did you buy, sweetie? Oh, great. And they, if they spend out everything, they're getting praise, and they're going to go they're going to continue that way. What about self gratification? We know that what they don't like to hear is no, but they like to say no a lot. But no is simply no, and you cannot have it now. You can have it later. And ensuring, of course, we line up with what we see. you know, so that they, because we can't say you can have it later, or you can have it on condition that you do so and so, and then you don't do it. You know, children are very, very quick to to recognize that type of lack of integrity, and they don't take us serious. You know, but what we're trying to teach here is to wait for things. You can't have them when you want them, and also let them know that we have limited resources. So we, mommy doesn't have the money, and we cannot afford that. You know, so these are teachable things. And then you could instead try to buy something, I mean, pay for something else, and say, you see, mommy could not buy this because we had to pay for this. You know, you could also, you're also teaching them, you know, about saving. You could teach them about saving, have their piggy bank. You know, I would advise that you give them something to save towards, because again, this makes them look forward to it. You know, so they could save towards maybe Father's Day purchase, a gift or something like that. Or they could save towards maybe having their own bank account. You know, you can really hype this up, you know, and save up to $100. I'll match it, and we'll go and set up an account for you. That's something for a child to look up to. So there are several opportunities, teachable moments within the house. It depends on, you know, if we're intentional and purposeful about it, we'll find several opportunities.
The songs are really good exercises, and I hope that the folks are what who are watching this will be able to implement it. And you've mentioned earlier before a few papers, from different educational institutions. But I want to put out a scenario, and I don't know if it will make sense, but let me know. What would be the difference, like a key difference, with a child who grew up with um an allowance and that management of the allowance, and a child who didn't grow up with allowance? So, what could be a key difference that you would say as an adult, this will maybe a result of what will happen?
I want to point out that it's not so much as having money, but what you do with the money, right? So you could have a child that grew up with an allowance, right? End up worse off than one who didn't grow up with allowance, simply because the way they spent that allowance, was a different. You could, it was not good enough. You could have someone who didn't grow up with allowance, and they could be, they could, because of that, they could be more financially prudent. So it depends. Actually, it depends. It's what you do with money that is really important. And I will always tell people, the difference between those who have and those who don't have is just simply those who save, because if you don't keep back anything, you will not have anything. You will not have anything saved. And we know that those who are in great economic situations, who earn a lot, could easily be in that situation. So I would say that a child grows up with allowances if they were taught how to manage that allowance, not spend out everything, and allocate them, even leave some to give or to share with others, that type of thing. It could redound very well in future for that child. And for children that didn't grow up with allowances, the thing is that I think this the same, like I said, there is going to be a time that they will start earning some. So it's all about starting them off well, as with the right education as well. Yeah, so that when they start earning, at the National Financial Literacy Program, we would, you know, mostly go to persons who don't who are vulnerable. Yeah, because the chances of them, being in terrible situations, stressful financial situations, is higher because they have less. And we tell them, you have more incentive to save, you have more reasons, to save, even though they would say, but our needs are more, but that in itself is a teachable moment, because you cannot be uh, earning so little, and then you're putting yourself in situations where your needs will be more, literally. Yeah. So all in all, I think it's neither here nor there for me.
Okay, and I want to touch on this conversation around that space of low income earning, especially when it comes to single mothers. And it's there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of stress happening, and it will be overwhelming. It is overwhelming to have those responsibilities. And for that mother who may be watching this now or on the replay and feel like there's this need to do it but doesn't necessarily have the bandwidth, the energy. And I know you mentioned you don't want to talk about the doom and gloom, but it's the reality. Like, what, as a single mother in that low income situation, what's one act, what's one single thing that they can do with their child to say, okay, the future with you, it would be a little better if when this mother does this particular thing.
Well, if I were in that mother's shoes, I think as much as possible, as much as life allows me, I want to focus on that child not ending up in the same situation as me, right? I don't know what could have caused it, but I am very sure. I mean, we're talking about mothers, for instance, who are low skilled, who are not able to get, regular jobs, or who have inconsistent uh, work, and therefore this impacts on their, so the first thing is, really seeing that, okay, do you need to ensure that this child understands that it's important to pass the exams, study hard, think about a career? Do you think it's important to, don't you think it's important that they do their homework? Don't you think it's important that you are around, you are very present, in their education to give them a good start? Because I think that that is going to be very important in terms of making a generational change like that. Otherwise it's going to go down the road. And the other thing, again, I would still say, is all about the education. I was speaking to a mother recently who was telling me how, you know there was a spell, a very very dry spell, when they hardly had anything to eat. And the child again was watching and seeing everything. She was involving the child, in her circumstances. She was discussing the financial affairs, because, and anytime the child said, "Mom, I would like this, my friend has it," and she'll say, "Well, you see, I don't have the money for it." And eventually she got a little job, and she said the first time they went to make grocery, the child was saying, "Don't spend out all the money. We will not have money just now. We will not have money again." So the child was watching, she was involving the child, and look at the result of it. We are talking about financial education here, financial literacy. That's why I'm mentioning these points. There are several other things we could talk about, but just to keep it in context, I would say, really ensure whatever you could do to make sure that your child has an early stage of life. And I think it begins with earning income.
Great advice. We have a question in the comments from Giselle. Excellent. It's what advice do you give a parent who offers a child, a young adult, use of debit or credit card?
Well, the question I would ask is that, how financially literate is that child? All right, because where's the wisdom in that if they have poor financial habits? They don't know anything about budgeting, and they want it now. That's I think that that's a train wreck in the making, right? So for me, if the child, of course, has been well taught, well educated, the child has been able to display all the, both, not just the behaviors but also the attitudes, being able to defer self gratification and not being involved in spontaneous spending and so on, I could trust that child. Anything beyond that, I think it's something that you want to think very hard about.
I can also attest to the fact that my first experience with credit card was just terrible, absolutely
Mhm.
terrible. And it had to do with the fact that I didn't have that understanding what it was. And We do live in a world where we have access to information, but that emotion attached with swiping, and obviously, as you mentioned earlier, we have so many touch points of go buy this. It's so much easier now to go buy this.
Yeah.
So what does that conversation looks like for a parent who decide, okay, I want to see how you manage that money? um is it a case of you build that behavior before you give them the card, is basically what you're saying?
I would definitely advise before, right? But again, it may be a teachable moment where you could say, I'm going to give you this opportunity. However, it's on the conditions, and you put the terms and the conditions, and you stick by the terms and conditions. You withdraw as soon as you start seeing irresponsible spending or use of the opportunity that you gave them. Yeah, that's it basically.
Well, yeah, that's it given me some flashbacks, but don't worry, it ends with
And
a good
Pauline,
ending.
yeah, and then the thing again is that sometimes we would say don't do this without explaining why. I think helping them to understand the dangers. I know that this can be very challenging, because sometimes you are telling them of the dangers and so on. They find it difficult to believe you because they just want to do what they want to do. But that should be really one of the things we should make a strong business case as to why we're so concerned, why we're so worried. Tell them the dangers of debt. Tell them, what it could lead you to do. And you may even have examples in your life that you shouldn't be ashamed to share it with your own children. Let them know. I mean, when I got my first paycheck, I went crazy, because I had never seen that much money, and I shared that with I made sure that my son knew all about that, and the impact that that had on me, fortunately, it was just a few months into my life that I quickly woke up and I said, no, I cannot do this, and I made some very quick adjustments, but I shared with him the negative impact, that it had on me. So sharing these things, pointing out examples, real life examples, and saying, this is why I do not want you going this way. This is why I'm hesitant about you going this way, because I do not want to give you this opportunity and you have these problems. So we must include that in the mix as well.
So, Ladi, you're telling me, telling your child just because I say so is not effective way of parenting?
Sometimes you'll be amazed. Sometimes, especially the kids these days, they are very analytical. They know how to advance their arguments, especially when they know what they want. So you have to be very prepared for that. And to counter whatever arguments you get from them. I mean, it can be quite fun, really, and that's just the thing. Again, make it fun, make it relatable, make it give it some integrity. Don't be so preachy about it. Don't be so theoretical. Be real. Be real. I think especially the millennials, once you start talking in this lofty way that doesn't they don't connect with, they lose patience and they switch off long time, even though they are nodding their heads and listening to you.
Yeah, they're probably already thinking about what they're gonna click on YouTube. All right. With that said, let's get some final thoughts on what is a key takeaway of anybody who may have watched in and because at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do. So, what is the biggest key takeaway that you want any parent that's watching this after this live is over?
You want your kids to live good lives, stable, sudden lives, financially secure, financially stable lives. I think if that's what you want, then you have a big part to play in it. Then educating them and ensuring that they have the right money values, they have the right tools, they have the right mindset about money is very critical to this, right? Don't just concentrate on the education and them getting good jobs alone. What they do with the money that they earn is also going to be very critical, and I believe that that's a great legacy to leave for your children. All right. So involving yourself in the process of your children becoming financially literate is, I think if you have not done that, this should be one of the things that you must do in 2022.
Awesome. And on that note of legacy, I want to thank you so much, Ladi Franklin, for joining us today and sharing insight into how to raise financially literate children in Trinidad and Tobago. Don't forget to sign up to be notified about the live show, the next live show. The link will be in the comments below. And as always, be sure to like and follow us on whichever platform you're watching this so you don't miss a single live show. And thank you for joining us again. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.